Well, my members, we are speaking with Dave Kovar today, and we're actually in his school in Sacramento, and it's just a pleasure to be back down here again with you, Dave.
It's been a long time, about 10, 15 years since you've been here. It's good to see you here.
No, you're wrong, because I came down here and did a Lead and Fit seminar for you.
That's right, okay. It's
getting
been
old.
less time than that. I'm thinking of the first time I met you 15 years ago in the early 90s.
Yeah, great. I'm going to just move you back a little bit, because you got a real powerful voice, so you don't have to be that close. So what I'd like to do, of course, we're going to take a tour of your facility today for our members and kind of describe what your facility is like. But, you know, you've always been, you know, very impressive on the floor. You develop high-quality staff, excellent instructors. In fact, you know, it's just interviewing Mark a little bit earlier, Caswell, right?
Right.
And he's been with you, what, 15 years plus. You know, you keep good staying power with the instructors. You know, obviously you develop Pro-Mac now that helps other school owners how to develop, you know, professional martial artists and good staff. Let's talk about the dynamics of, you know, your SWAT team and how you handpick them, how you develop them, and kind of handhold some school owners. Like, they may just be starting it up and don't even know where to start, because I remember when I first started my school, geez, you know, I mean, I grabbed some parents trying to help me out on the floor.
You know, to start out with, I think something's important to remember is sometimes the most expensive help is the free help. And what I mean by that is that SWAT teams is a means to an end and shouldn't be considered. Some guys think, hey, I'll get a big SWAT team and I don't need to have any employees. You know, the SWAT team's purpose is to facilitate help on the floor and to be trained to become potentially someone that's a full-time instructor. And so I think that's important to bring up, because one of the things that you want to do is not just throw anybody out on the floor that doesn't have any training. Is that sometimes you'd grab someone that's your highest belt rank and you put them in front of the class and you say, you teach. They got the best round kick, so you teach us how to do a round kick. Which, as you know, being a good teacher and being a good martial artist aren't necessarily the same thing. And so for starters, I think where a lot of people go wrong is that they look for the best martial artist versus the person that has the best attitude. And I think you have someone, if you're SWAT team, what you're looking for when you're recruiting is not necessarily the highest rank, but someone has an interest, and that it's a people person that has the ability to interact with others. That's a starting point. The next thing to do is you got to train them, and there's lots of different ways to do that. Our preferred method is we put them through an initial intensive. It's usually a 10-week program where they meet once a week for a couple hours to discuss teaching concepts, and then they have assignments during that week that prepare them. Like this week, they're going to sit in the bleachers and just watch classes, but they're going to watch them from the standpoint of a parent or a potential student, or from the standpoint of an instructor, just to give them a perspective a little bit different. And then the first thing that we have them do is each week there's different assignments that the SWAT team have that a lot of times in the years past, what I did is I'd throw somebody out there on the floor to help them and I wouldn't give them any feedback. So they'd get help for 3 weeks, and next thing you know, they weren't helping anymore. So right now we have clear guidelines that every week, like for example, week 1, let's just say is a protocol week. And so we're really going to stress the yes sirs and the bows on the mats and all the focus anchors like eyes on who and attention stance, and they're really going to be key, focusing on that aspect. The next week might be Good Finders Week, meaning that the assistant instructors that week, what their main focus on is looking for students that are doing things right and then telling them about it, because that's a habit I want trained in my instructors. The natural instinct of someone when they first start teaching, unless told otherwise, they're going to make corrections. They're going to walk up and say, oh, let me help out with this kid. Bend your knees, get your guard up, all that kind of good stuff. Well, I want my instructors out of the gate to be looking for what the student is doing right first. So the bottom line is having a system with which you give people clear expectations of what's expected and then feedback on how they did, and slowly indoctrinate it into them, and then don't overdo them. When I was a little kid, when I was asked to teach, I was so excited I couldn't believe it, right? And I helped out a lot, and it could have been maybe I could have been burned out, but for whatever reason I continued on. But a lot of my co-students helped out all the time for a couple months, and then all of a sudden they weren't training anymore because they got kind of burned out. So to not overwork your SWAT team, I guess, is the point I'm getting at.
So generally when someone comes in, how much time do they spend helping out on the floor?
An hour to 2 every week. That's really all I want them at the initial stages. Okay, and because remember they have their regular training to do as well. They have to be training as a regular student. Okay, and then I want them, literally, I would just as soon have them show up once a week to help out with the 4 o'clock Little Dragons program and be consistent than be there kind of hit and miss 3 or 4 classes a week. And you always want them leaving wanting more. You know, you don't want them, you want them, if you do decide you're going once a week and you decide you want to switch them to twice, you want them excited about it, not like, you don't want them coming to you saying, sir, I can't help out so much. That's what your employees are for, is, you know, for an actual full shift. That's my personal belief anyway.
So, what belt level do you take someone in to be a SWAT member? Is there a certain belt requirement?
You know, we have, currently we have 19 campuses, and some of them are real new and they're startups, and others have been in business at the particular location we're at now. We've been in this area for over 20 years, right? So this particular campus is a very mature school with lots of black belts. The old phrase in the land of the blind, the one-eyed man is king, right? So at this school, we don't usually use too many lower belts as in our SWAT team. However, at our newer campuses, we have people that have been training for a few months that are helping out in some capacity. Mind you, they're not teaching classes, but you know, we have someone that's an orange belt for us. It takes at least about 4 months to get there, that actually help hold pads and motivate kids and talk to them that are in training. So I don't really think it's ever too soon to have someone in some capacity help out in the school. What I don't like to see is someone that is underqualified actually running a class. But as far as belt rank goes, it varies based on where someone's school is. If I'm starting a school from scratch and I have no staff and I'm out in the middle of nowhere, I'll tell you what, you know, regardless of the belt, the first person that comes in and I think that has potential, they're helping me. They're going to start helping me out right away. They're going to get a crash course. Not a crash course, I'm not going to move them up through the ranks faster, but I'm going to give them a crash course on how to, you know, help me, assist me on the floor.
And is there an age minimum that you'll take them?
We kind of break it into two categories. We have our SWAT team, adult SWAT team, which is 18 and older, and then we have, of course, the youth SWAT team, which generally speaking, the official team, 11 or 12. You know, we don't have, it's rigid flexibility. It's nothing cast in stone. But the 11 and 12-year-old has to be of high rank. In other words, we're not going to have a 11-year-old yellow belt helping us in the class. Example, my daughter is 9, and she's a tiny 9, so she's little, right? Well, she helps out in Little Dragons once a week. And there's exceptions. You know, she's been training since she was 3, and she's just a little bigger than Little Dragons. But so what does she do? Well, all she does is do the same thing they do, and hopefully is a role model. So the younger kids don't do as much teaching as they kind of lead the class as energies. They participate in the class as a student, but hopefully at a higher example.
Yeah, and some of my, you know, my best instructors now that are 17, I mean, they started out, you know, helping out with the kids, and they become awesome instructors.
Isn't it amazing when they're around an environment where people are positive, they don't know any different. And you know, you such as myself, we've been teaching in a positive fashion for so long now that all our students, that's how they came up, and they don't know any different. You know what I'm saying? So a lot of times, if the way you've taught is positive and empowering, and if that's the way the student came up through the ranks, their ability to become a good instructor, you've cut the time dramatically, because that's all they know.
Now, let's say I'm an adult in your school, I'm an orange belt, and I'm seeing these other people helping out, and I come to you. Do I come to you, or do you have
I search them out, absolutely. I think there's a phrase we call it, plant seeds early and often, and what that means is that it's never too soon to approach somebody about helping out in class. I've approached people on their first lesson. I've said, by the way, I really like what I see, and I'd like you to consider martial arts. Have you ever thought about martial arts as a possible career option somewhere down the line? I just took his first class. Mind you, I haven't done this many times, okay? But what does someone think? Whoa, really? You know, the worst thing that happens from that is it makes them a better student. You know what I'm saying? And then I explain, well, I'll tell you what, of course we're a long ways from you being able to do that, but what I'm looking for is someone that has the right attitude, that comes to class on a consistent basis, that helps out his fellow students, and really is willing to do whatever it takes. And that conversation, and I've given that conversation of hundreds of times, not on the first lesson, that's only a couple, but at various stages, really has helped to net us a lot of students. Now, so we have a rule, plant 10 seeds, 1 will sprout. Meaning that conversation that I had, I've got to have that about 10 times before someone actually develops into a staff member. One really key thing about your SWAT team and staff members is most of us we're very short-sighted. What I mean by that is we think, oh, we need an instructor next Monday, what do I got to do, right? Well, that's hard to figure out what to do when you're down an instructor and you need one for next Monday. And I've been there, and I don't like being there. But what we're doing is we're constantly planting seeds so that in a year from now, they're going to be prepared. And we've been doing that long enough now to where we have a pretty strong bench. In other words, I know that in a year from now, I'm going to have a need for an instructor. So I'm talking to people now that are going to bloom in a year from now.
And that's some of the biggest mistakes people or school owners will do is open a second school and don't have bench strength.
Absolutely. I think that, you know, sometimes we feel like, oh, I've got one school figured out. I guess the next step is I have to open up 2, and I think that's a mistake I've seen a lot of people do. I think that having one school, one successful school, being in the trenches, being involved with students, it's a good life. And I don't think that the natural, and of course I have more than one school, but it's because my brother's been my partner, right? And we've grown that way. If I was by myself and had no partner, I think I'd probably be one guy in the school, in the trenches, teaching classes and loving it, such as yourself. You know, a real competent guy that you could have had a ton of schools, but you've elected to take one location and really work it to its fullest.
And obviously ProMac came out of all the work and all the research you've done here over all these, at least the last 15 years that I've seen you, because now you've got it all organized, and it's a great way for you to train new staff, and you got ProMac evolved so that other school owners can now use the same formula that you use here.
It's really been a fun process, a challenging process, but to document all the stuff that we've done. And you know, so many school operators are out there are successful. They know how to run a school, but they can't necessarily tell other people what they're doing, because it's just, hey, this is what I've done. So what we have attempted to do is document all the little details that go into running a successful school, and that's what ProMac's about, is our A to Z, every detail, right from, you know, marketing all the way down to how to do a black belt test and everything in between from every aspect. And it's not theory, it's stuff that we're actually functioning and doing. So it's been the best thing for me to put this all together.